At 2:17 a.m., I woke to a low hum and a back door I was sure I'd locked. Hum is the wrong word. It was a held note the house didn't know how to absorb, like a refrigerator that learned music. It made the window glass think. It made my chest a sounding board. I lay there, cataloging it because that's what you do when fear is trying to spend your money. You count the bills. 2 beats in, 3 beats out. Even. Measured. It had the shape of breathing. I said my daughter's name without turning on the light. My wife didn't stir. My daughter should have answered in that gummy sweet voice she used when the night pressed too close. The hum lifted a little, like curiosity does when it's invited. The hallway was a cooler color than usual, like the nightlight had backed away from its job. The back door, the one I'd promised to fix on Saturday and hadn't, was standing open into a yard the wind had made into a stage. The wind chimes were still. The screen pushed inward and outward as if it had a second set of lungs. In the yard, tiny footprints, bare. 30 feet across damp desert grass that shouldn't be this green. And then they ended inside a perfect circle of flattened blades. The circle was too clean, not trampled. Pressed like a decision. Above the fence, a white light hung at a height that makes adult men wish they had someone to ask permission from. Silent. Watching. I shouted her name. The night was kind enough to throw it back, but it added something I didn't put in. My daughter answered from too high to be hers. "Daddy," she said, in a voice that sounded like it had been practiced from a recording of her. The timing was wrong. Syllables spaced by a metronome. Not breath. Beats. I took a step and the wind chimes played backward. I knew the song, and I didn't. The baby monitor on the kitchen counter woke by itself and whispered one sentence I will never forgive. She went up. "Hold the door," I said to no one, to the house, to God, because the dumb little sentence was the only tool in reach. Hold the door. Hold the world inside it. This is me, because the monster doesn't matter if you don't know whose bed it visits. 36, mechanic by day, the kind of guy who can make a Chevy tell the truth. I don't scare easy. I check things twice. I turn the thermostat to 70 because anything else is just theater. I had a wife asleep 2 rooms away and a 6-year-old who sometimes snored like a whistle, like her nose was learning its part. I had promised Monday to repair the door latch and put it off to Friday, then let Friday forgive me. I had promised to move the toy chest from the hall and leave the armoire door closed so it wouldn't drift open with AC. These are the small crimes that make men repent in the middle of the night. All week, little things had been building like a weather front. The nightlight in her room flickered at 2:17 on Tuesday and then behaved like it had an alibi. The baby monitor carried a single breath that wasn't mine on Wednesday, and I blamed the neighbor's radio because blame loves a stranger. Thursday, the chime built into her music box gave me 2 notes while I was fixing the garbage disposal. 2 notes that belonged to a song I only recognize now, reversed. I told my wife each thing and she told me sleep, which is fair, because we're all entitled to a country in our heads where we aren't under attack. My daughter had taken 3 photos with my phone in the yard that afternoon. Blurry, because kids move like lightning and cameras resent them. In all 3, only she was smeared where she stood in front of the back fence. The fence, the toy rake, the plastic chair, all were sharp. Her body carried 2 faces in one frame. A lag like the shutter was deciding whether it was her turn. I saw it, told the phone to behave, and forgot. We forget until we don't. I stepped off the stoop. The temperature slid down in the circle. The grass under my bare feet felt hard, like someone had told each blade to remember a new direction. The ozone smell was a penny pressed against the tongue of the air. The white light over the fence tilted, not like a curious head. Not like a dog trying to sort a sound, exact, measured, a listening tilt the way a tuner leans toward an instrument it already knows. "Hold the door," I said again, the prayer of the incompetent. I kept the door in my peripheral because rules are the only thing left when you run out of muscle. A toy xylophone in the yard said plink plink backward. The hum lifted half a step, like a question. I looked up because everybody does in stories like these and because gravity is a habit, not a law. The light didn't blind me. It was soft, medical, a stolen hospital glow. The fence slats threw soft shadows in the wrong direction. The dogs next door were off their chain of cause and effect. You could see their throats working and hear no sound. I followed her footprints to the circle. The prints ended clean, no scuff, no jump, end. The last little heel mark had water beaded in it, like the night had sweated. I knelt, and the hum climbed one more polite interval, and the grass inside the ring leaned like 1,000 little compasses agreeing. Behind me, the armoire in the hall gave 3 slow knocks on its own door. One like manners someone had remembered. Under the gap, the shadow of legs that were too thin to be human legs stood without feet to end them. I leaned left to fix parallax, and the legs didn't. Tilt isn't just a move. It's a kind of attention. They were listening through the wood. The baby monitor said, "Hold the door," in my daughter's voice, but it wasn't her breath. Her timing didn't live inside it. The consonants stood like signposts. The vowels had been measured with a ruler. I went to the armoire because I'm a father, and the rules of what you open change when it's your kid. The handle was cold, the way a wrench that lives in a freezer is cold. I opened it and found air and hangers and a winter coat she refused to grow into and a space. The space felt looked at. The hum went silent, and the silence had weight. I said her name again. The light over the fence tilted again, listening. I'm supposed to be a man who fixes things. I fix fans and belts and hoses and lies. I fix doors. That night I fixed nothing. I ran to the kitchen for the phone, and my hand knocked the letter magnets off the fridge. A rainbow spill we step over, half-legible words that say whatever the day needs. When I looked down, the letters that always turned to mud had written something clean. UP, that's all. Not dad, not dog. Just up. The clock on the oven read 2:17. The second made its lap, and the clock politely repeated 2:17. The baby monitor let a breath out that belonged to no one we own. I hit 911. The call connected, breathed in my ear for 7 seconds, and dropped. The log will show it. Logs are ugly and honest. Logs don't take your side. I went back out. I stood in the circle. I whispered please like a man who has no nouns left. The light listened. I felt a little pressure behind my right eye, like a dentist pressing lightly behind the tooth he doesn't want to pull. My pupils wanted to narrow, but the light wasn't the kind that asks them to. It was soft and exact, and it wanted my attention without my consent. Take me, I said, because every movie lied to me about bravery, and because it was a sentence I could make without coughing. If you think that makes me noble, marry me to your idea of men. If you think it makes me stupid, you're not wrong. It was the only coin in my pocket. The wind chimes tried to play forward, then backward again, and made a sound like metal thinking. The light accounted for this without comment. The hum returned in a lower key like it had learned my voice. I took one step toward the fence, and the circle pushed me back. Not with force, with decision. My heel found the heel print of my daughter, and I understood that feet can be doors too. Over my head, something said my daughter's name again in my voice. I didn't know I could hate the shape of a word until I heard it arrive without me. I went inside and closed the back door, because you're supposed to close doors and because motion is agency even when a house is the one making choices. The hum lifted once, twice, and stopped. The light folded without moving. That's the only way I can describe it, and I realized that motion and change are divorced in some rooms. The dogs found their voices again and were wrong about everything for a while. The baby monitor clicked to snow, which we tell kids is angels or war, depending on what kind of father we are. I put my hands on the counter and learned what it is to hold a house up with tendon and will. Hold the door. I told the hinges that never asked to be part of a war. We called the cops at 2:24 because persistence is a kind of mercy. They came with flashlights and form and the kind of silence men bring when they don't want to say ghosts in front of a child's bed. One walked the fence line and asked where my ladder was. One asked if we had custody problems, like he was asking the sink if it had feelings. Those are fair questions. I answered them like an adult. The female officer, whose name I will never forget, found the end of the footprints and stood in the circle with her eyes closed for one breath and then stepped out like a rule had nudged her. The neighbor with the dog said he saw a glow that made his backyard look like a hallway in a hospital. The neighbor on the other side said he thought my porch light had grown tired and bright at the same time. A boy 2 houses down said he heard wind chimes playing wrong way notes and promised he wasn't on YouTube at the time. The officers wrote things that were facts and skipped the ones that asked for faith. That morning the sun came up the way it always threatens to, and we walked the block and we found nothing. The circle in my yard still remembered what it had learned. The grass inside was obedient to a downward idea. Birds tried it once and then didn't. The dogs traced a wide arc. Around it, like sailors around a whirlpool, they decided to respect. At 10 a.m., I played the audio from the baby monitor and found a plain hum with pauses I could count. I ran it through a cheap app because I fix engines and audio is just math with different clothes. Slowed by 50%, the hum carried intervals, spaces, like breaths practicing a word. Small syllable gaps, like it was trying to say her name using our timing and not its own. The baby cam file carried a duplicate frame at 20 one frame twice and a little scramble of pixels around the edge like someone had put a bowl on the lens and lifted it too slow to be a person. The oven clock still wrote 2:17 and refused to learn 2:18 until I unplugged it and made it forget. The magnet letters on the fridge didn't lie. They don't have that skill. They said UP all day because I left them that way. I left them that way because I wanted someone to own a sentence in my house, even if it was plastic. People brought pies and 2 kinds of gospel. Reporters brought eyes and epithets and the name of that air base that lives like a rumor in our streets. I told them I had a circle, footprints that end, a clock that stuttered, a call log with a 7-second open line. I told them about a light that tilted and listened. I told them I had no body, just the small physics of an absence. One woman came with a rock that had healed something for her sister and asked if she could place it by the circle. One man came with a map of the night sky and told me names for lights that don't live in houses. A boy came and put his hand on the fence and the hair on my arm stood up like it had been briefed. He backed away. He looked at me like we share a country now. For 2 weeks at 2:17, the house phone lit, gave me 7 seconds of open line, and went back to being a lamp. The baby monitor, which we left on because we're weak, played the 2 notes she loved in her music box, then added a third it had no key for. The armoire learned to stay closed. I put a screw in it like a man who can win a war with hardware. Neighbors sometimes avoid saying her name, like a spell they don't want to waste. My wife turned prayer into a kind of breathing I fell in love with too late. I have fixed the back door 3 times since. It does not squeak. It does not swing. It holds. People will tell you about grays and discs and programs and rooms they can't name. I will not tell you what took my child because the words you pick get in your bloodstream. I will tell you what it did. It learned to say her name in my voice and it tilted. When I spoke and it lowered when I bargained and it made a circle that remembers better than grass should. And it taught the baby monitor to tell me news I can't. Use. She went up, the monitor said. Not gone. Up. You can make a theology out of that if you're into systems. I wear my watch on the other wrist now because the skin under the old place feels like it is missing the weight of a small hand. I go out to the circle at 2:17 more often than doctors would advise, and I say her name like a password that may one day work. Sometimes a breeze that belongs to nobody moves one blade inside the ring. Sometimes the wind chimes consider their responsibilities and decline. Once the light over the neighbor's garage flicked twice for no one. If you want to call that hope, you can. I call it inventory. I have the audio. I have the frame with 2:17:08 twice. I have the call log that connects and breathes and hangs at 7 seconds. I have UP in plastic. The cops have their report and their word for me, anguish, which is clinical and probably true. Preachers have their box for me, trial, which is elastic and definitely tidy. Internet men have their drawer for me, gray, which is convenient and probably a way to get to sleep. Have one sentence that has arms and knuckles, and teeth and milk and the laugh she used when I missed a step on purpose. Hold the door. I didn't. Or maybe I did, and the door wasn't the part that gets to choose. If a night like mine leans down into your yard, here is lousy advice from a man with no laurels. Do less than your movies taught you. Say the name you own. Listen for the tilt. Count what you can count. Seconds, notes, letters on a fridge, because when the narrative abandons you, math will hold your hand. And if the thing that listens teaches your house a new verb, Don't argue with it in a language you don't speak. If any of this matches the shape of your night, hum that learned speech. Footprints that end, light that tilts, clocks that stutter, dogs that go silent, wind chimes that play backward. Say one word in the comments so I know I'm not the only father trying to invent a door where the world forgot to cut one. Up. No addresses. No maps, no coordinates wearing human clothes, just up. I read it at 2:17 with my hand on the hinge. Sometimes I think the circle in the yard looks a little shallower. Sometimes I go out and it looks exactly the same. Sometimes I can't tell because grief has bad eyesight and still insists on driving. The wind chimes have learned silence as grammar. The light has not returned in a way any neighbor can use. The house holds the door better than I do. If she went up, she learned it better than me. Tonight I will set my phone to record at 2:16 and remember that batteries are the only hearts I know how to change. I will close the armoire and the back door, and I will put the magnets back into UP if the day has spent them on cat or wow. I will stand in the kitchen listening to electricity do its small chorus, and if the hum learns to talk again, I will say yes to the only question I want it to be asking, and when it doesn't ask, I will say her name anyway, because names are doors that open both ways whether the house believes in it or not. Hold the door. I am trying.